Good. Do I start this, or do you with the motion?
I can do the motion first, and then you can. Resolution number, first we need to reconvene our meeting.
Okay. We are reconvening the May 1st, 2017 meeting of the Delaware County Board of Commissioners, and I will turn it over to Jennifer to open the hearing.
Resolution number 17-453, a final hearing for the Havens 503 Drainage Improvement Petition Project.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 17-453. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis? Aye. Mr. Benton?
Aye. Okay, so we are in the hearing officially. This is the final hearing for Havens 503 Drainage Improvement Project petition. And let me review what will happen this afternoon with this final hearing. First of all, I want to welcome everyone. There is a sign-in sheet that should be circulating. I assume
Yes.
there it is right there. If everyone would please sign in, that would be appreciated. We will hear a report from the county engineer and the Soil and Water Conservation District. We will take questions. They will take questions from the board. Then we will open it up to hear from all those in favor of the petition project, and then after that, we will hear from all those opposed to the petition project. During the testimony, you will be asked to take an oath. So I will swear you in so that you are sworn in, and testimony and then is official. We'll continue back and forth if new information comes up or additional people wish to speak, taking additional questions from the board. After listening to the testimony and the report of the engineer, the board will then decide whether to find in favor of the improvement, affirming the order, and confirming the maintenance assessments, or the board may dismiss the petition. The board considers the following in their decision: whether the board hereby finds that the proposed improvement is necessary, it will be conducive to the public welfare. The board also finds that it's reasonably certain that the cost of the proposed improvement will be less than the benefit. So with that, I will turn it over to Brett. Is Brett going to do it? Okay. There's Brett, if you could identify yourself and go ahead and read the report.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brett Bacon, Soil and Water Conservation District. Also with us today are Scott Stevens from the Soil and Water Conservation District and Rob Riley and Brett Bergerford from the Delaware County Engineer's Office. I will read the final hearing report into the record. Final report, Havens number 503, drainage petition per ORC 6131, January 17th, 2017. This report has been prepared for the final hearing on a drainage improvement petition filed by Glen Road Capital, LLC on March 18, 2014. The general location and course of the requested improvements is stated in the petition as follows. In Delaware County, Berlin Township, within the Olentangy watershed, following the Haven number 503 tile, a ditch beginning on the south of Peachboro Road, flowing south through the middle parcel 418-330-01-031-000 and terminating at or near the southern property line of said parcel. The following is the nature of the work petitioned: to generally improve the drainage, both surface and subsurface, to a good and sufficient outlet by replacing, repairing, or altering the existing improvements as required and or creating new surface and subsurface drainage mains or laterals as requested by this petition. Petition process. This petition has been submitted according to Ohio Revised Code, Section 6131, which authorizes the Board of County Commissioners to act on behalf of benefited property owners to make drainage improvements. If the Commissioners decide to proceed with the project, the costs related to the improvements are collected via special assessment to the landowners in the watershed according to the benefit received. The construction assessments would be placed on the property tax bills of the benefited landowners and can be spread over a maximum of 8 years with 16 semi-annual installments depending on the method of payment chosen by the Commissioners. Additionally, the improvements will be placed on the County Drainage Maintenance Program per Ohio Revised Code Section 6137, with maintenance funds being collected semi-annually similar to the original construction costs. These annual maintenance assessments are generally 2 to 3% of the construction assessment. It should be noted that property owners are only assessed for those improvements that are located downstream from their properties. No property is assessed for improvements located, quote, upstream of a given parcel. In addition, units of government that hold rights of way for public roads would also be assessed for both construction and maintenance costs in the same manner as private property owners. The decision to approve a petition is a three-step process involving a viewing, initial or first hearing, and a second or final hearing. A viewing of the proposed improvements was conducted on June 2, 2014 by the Commissioners to familiarize themselves with the location and condition of the existing improvements. Next, the first hearing was held on June 6, 2014. At this first hearing, the Commissioners found in favor of the petition. They requested the Delaware County Engineer and the Delaware Soil and Water Conservation District to proceed in the development of engineering plans and specifications and the schedule of assessments. It is this information that is before the Board of Commissioners for consideration at this second and final hearing. Project estimate. Construction, $60,191.25. Administration, planning, and inspection, $12,000. Drainage maintenance startup, 5%, $1,629.78. Contingency, 15%, $10,923.16. Total estimated cost, $84,744.19. Calculation of assessments. The Ohio Revised Code instructs county engineers to calculate the assessments to individual property owners based on the benefits received from the improvements for the various properties in the watershed. The ORC further defines benefited land as, quote, lands that have been removed from their natural state by deforestation, cultivation, artificial drainage, urban development, or other man-made causes shall be considered as benefited by an improvement required to dispose of the accelerated flow of water from the uplands. Assessments to individual parcels have been calculated using the following formula, a rationale that is widely used throughout the state of Ohio. Acres benefited times land use factor times percent of improvement used times remote factor equals individual parcel assessment factor. Each parcel assessment is then determined by the individual parcel assessment factor divided by the total of all individual assessment factors times the total construction cost equals the parcel assessment. Explanation of factors. Acres benefited. Total number of acres within a given parcel that contribute drainage to the improvement. Land use factor. The land use factors are important in establishing the relative benefit to parcels in the watershed based on the amount of increased stormwater runoff resulting from changing the land use of a given parcel from the original natural condition to the current land use. Percent of improvement used. The point at which drainage from a given parcel enters the improvement. Parcels are only assessed for the portion of the improvement that lies downstream of the parcel. Remote factor. The remote factors are based upon a parcel's distance from the improved section of the drainage course. Remote factors are typically established in half-mile increments, with the parcels that are most remote from the actual improvement receiving the greatest reduction on their assessment. No remote factor has been applied for this project. Special note, the total assessment for lands within the present and future Belmont Place subdivision within the City of Delaware, including the parent parcel and excluding platted road right-of-way, has been calculated as one entity, assuming all the land as residential. This total assessment has then been distributed to each individual parcel on an equal acre basis. Benefits versus cost. One of the primary factors set forth in ORC Section 6131 for consideration in the approval or dismissal of petition request is the actual benefit of the proposed improvements to the watershed in question. The following analysis examines this factor from the standpoint of land productivity for the agricultural acres as well as the value of drainage to residential parcels. A soil and water study conducted by the Cooperative Extension Service of The Ohio State University in 1979 titled Drainage, What Is It Worth? Stated that typically drainage improvements in agricultural areas are beneficial due to increased agricultural yields. This benefit does not take into consideration other drainage benefits such as more timely tillage, harvesting, etc. The premise of this study was that benefits equals increased yield times market price. Applying this premise to the following case can be made. Approximately 46.6% or 56.7 acres of the 121.7 acre watershed is agricultural land. The 2012 through 2016 average market price for corn and soybeans in Ohio as reported by the USDA National Agricultural Statistics Service, is $4.98 per bushel for corn and $12.14 per bushel for soybeans. The estimated yield increases given the appropriate drainage improvements are in place equal 15 bushels per acre for corn and 6 bushels per acre for soybeans, as stated in the Extension Service study. Crop production benefit examples. Corn, 15 bushel increase in yield times $4.98 per bushel times 56.7 acres equals $4,235.49 increase annually. Soybeans, 6 bushel increase in yield times $12.14 per bushel times 56.7 acres equals $4,130.03 of increase annually. For this example, we will assume that the cropland acres are distributed equally between soybeans and corn for a potential average annual increase of $4,182.76. If this potential annual return is multiplied over an 8-year period, the benefit equals $33,462.08. While these examples do not take into consideration individual farm management practices, it does illustrate the fact that good agricultural drainage is a key factor in farm profitability and would reflect positively when considering a cost-benefit analysis for this project. The increased value or benefit for residential or commercial properties is much more subjective and difficult to quantify. Residential and commercial properties commonly center on improved on-site drainage and road driveway drainage. Neighborhoods that have planned and maintained drainage infrastructures generally have higher resale values than those communities that are known to have a history of drainage problems or prolonged surface ponding. The benefits to commercial parcels generally focus on loss of productivity and physical damages to facilities and stock due to poor water management. Approximately 51.23 acres, or 42.1% of the land use in the watershed, is currently residential in nature. When evaluating the cost of providing adequate drainage outlets for residential properties, we find that for new construction, developers or home builders spend $1,000 to $3,000 on average per lot to attain adequate drainage infrastructure. With 53 residential parcels in the watershed, the potential average benefit is $53,000 to $159,000. While this analysis does not take into account many potential variables, it could aid in the decision-making process. The benefits to this proposed project will be realized well beyond the construction repayment term. As previously stated, the construction assessments will be placed on the property tax bills of the benefited landowners and can be spread over a maximum of 8 years depending on the method of payment chosen by the commissioners. Alternatively, assessments can be paid in full within 30 days after the close of the final hearing without paying interest. The long-term benefits will be realized by virtue of this project being placed on the County Drainage Maintenance Program in perpetuity per Ohio Revised Code Section 6137. ORC 6137 requires maintenance funds to be collected semi-annually, similar to the construction costs. These maintenance funds are applied to the annual inspection and maintenance of this specific project. Recommendations. Based on all the information gathered, I believe this project, as proposed, is technically feasible and would serve as an adequate drainage outlet for the drainage needs of the watershed. Furthermore, the parcel assessments for this project are within the range of assessments that can be expected for a project of this scope. The testimony brought to the Board of Commissioners by the landowners as to whether the benefits of this project exceed the costs should be given significant consideration in the decision to move forward with this project. A resolution affirming the order to proceed, detailing the approved areas of work, confirming the schedule of assessments, and ordering the project to be advertised for competitive bid per Section 6131 of the ORC will be necessary. The resolution by the Board of Commissioners shall also determine how long a period of time, in semi-annual installments as taxes are paid, shall be given the owners of land benefited to pay the construction assessments. If the Board of Commissioners chooses to dismiss the petition in whole or in any part, I would recommend a resolution reflecting that decision, and that the costs for the proceedings, including the costs incurred by the Board of Commissioners, the county engineer, and the Delaware Soil and Water Conservation District in making surveys, plans, reports, and schedules, be distributed to the benefiting landowners in the same ratio as determined in the final estimated assessments presented at this hearing. This amount is estimated at $7,500.
Okay. Thank you, Brett. Questions from the board?
None at this time.
No.
I did have one question for you, Brett, and that is, actually maybe a couple. The property to the right, I think it's 22 and 6.
And we know I can't see a pointer. There, I can see it.
That one, and then the field
6.
above it, and 3 or 5, whatever that is. It's like an eye test.
That's 2. Oh, that's 5.
5. Are not 22, but are 5 and 6 in process of, officially in process of development? Have they submitted?
Not to my knowledge at this time.
Okay, okay. And then, how many lots are planned? Because I understand number 24 is in the process of being developed. How many lots are presented for approval in that?
I'm going to defer to the county engineer. They've been in contact with the city of Delaware. I'm not sure whether we've gotten that information from the city or not.
Do you know that?
You want to answer now?
Sure, if you would just identify yourself and...
Kevin McCauley, Glenwood Capital. You're asking on, clarify your question, I just want to make sure I understood it, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The lot that's numbered 24 up there, the parcel that's number 24, the portion that's within the watershed, you know about how many lots that would...
What's platted today
Yeah.
versus what's up there? So I think he has 50 lots platted today, shown up there. What's actually platted today is 74 lots.
Okay.
So we had the right to do more than that in a zoning class, which I can talk about in a little bit, but actual platted approved lots today stand at 74 lots.
Okay, I wanted to get a feel of the scope of the project there. Thank you.
Is that, let me just ask, is that just on 24? There's 8 and then there's 9 above it? Are those,
Like I said, yeah.
Parcel number 8 is owned by Grady Memorial Hospital.
Right.
okay.
And parcel number 9 is a different owner, Pulte Homes.
Oh, okay. How far along is Pulte?
Are they in development process?
Are they in the,
To the best of my knowledge, they have not presented any kind of plans for development.
okay,
That was what I thought.
okay, thank you, thanks.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Any other? Okay, we will move then to the next part of this hearing, and that is to hear from those in favor of the petition project. So if anyone wants to speak in favor of the petition project, I will swear you in, and you can speak. All right?
Yes, I will again. Kevin McCauley, Glenwood Capital LLC.
Okay, let me swear you in. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. I gave testimony back when we first did the petition, so I wasn't necessarily prepared to speak to the benefits of the approval. We do stand in favor of that continued approval of the project and the benefit that it provided in the area. I guess I came ill prepared to discuss that again, so I'm not sure if you want to discuss those or just some general questions that I have regarding the process is what I'd like to talk about, but we are in favor of the project. We do stand here in favor of the project. What we have questions on as Glenwood Capital is how the assessment allocation is addressed, specifically then discussing some of the points that you just asked about on the zoning of some of the other properties and where they stand in this process. So if allowed, I'd like to ask some of those questions and walk through that for either you to answer your benefit or for the others here to address as well. So again, just want to affirm that yes, we are in support of the project. I believe it's a needed project that needs to occur, and in no way do we want to draw that back or slow that process in any way. It's been going on for 3 years already, and hasn't gotten in. So I think one of the questions that you pointed out that I'd like to address as well is in the assessment calculation, I got some of the numbers, or I got the numbers from the county on Friday, so I've been digging into this, trying to learn a little bit how some of those assessments are calculated.
Okay.
If you were to look at, specifically you mentioned number 9, number 8, and number 24, so the Pulte ground, the hospital ground, and then my ground, Glenwood Capital. Those 3 properties are all in the city of Delaware. All 3 of those properties are zoned PMU. All 3 of those properties, which PMU for different uses, Pulte Homes PMU for residential uses, the hospital PMU for obviously commercial ground and hospital use, My PMU offers a mix of commercial outside of the watershed in the front and the residential. So when I look at those and I ask for the assessments to say, how did one get assessed versus another, my ground is assessed as fully developed because I have a phase started, where Pulte's ground is assessed at agricultural ground. They've started a phase. The Glen Ross communities, they started a phase. It's all in the master plan. I've got the master plan to be happy to live with the board that was provided to me by the city of Delaware. Similarly, the hospital ground, it's a PMU, it's been zoned. It's been started to be developed. There's a piece of property on the front of that 100-acre development that's started. Again, it's been assessed at a rate of agricultural use and wetlands use because of the location where the trees are. So the question would just be then, why is the remaining ground that I have, approximately 19 acres that is sitting there today where the 24 is, which is being farmed today, which is a PMU, why is it being charged assessed anything other than agricultural use? I have a development plan and I'm moving forward, but not yet on that section. So if Pulte's not going to be zoned that, and the hospital's not going to be zoned or charged and assessed that, I'm not sure why I would be assessed at a different rate. It would seem logical we all get assessed the same. One way or the other, they can come and join me and be residential, which is at 80% value versus 5. That's the difference. So when you take it into your calculation, you look at how many acres you have there, and you multiply it by a factor of 5 for agricultural, or you multiply it by a factor of 80 if you're residential. So it's sizable difference. So along with those same areas, if we're going to look at my property and say, okay, what do we have there? I've got 8 acres of ponds that are also still included in the calculation. So my 46 acres in the watershed, 8 acres are assessed at a residential rate of 80 times the value, but it's ponds. Detaining that water, holding that water, slowing that water. So again, if we're going to look up the hospital ground and say, well, they've got trees and they've got wetlands, they're assessed at 2 times the rate. I have ponds. Should I not be assessed at 2 times the rate, not 80 times? These are some of my basic understandings of some of the questions and calculations that, again, I don't want to stop or slow down. I just like to talk about how we get to an end result of the assessment to be fair. So you ask, why would I question some of these? When you look up, and I'll have to reference down, I make up 38% of the watershed area, and I'm being charged 77% of the correction. So that makes me, first blush, say, how would that be possible? Let's jump into the numbers. And that's why I started to arrive and break down some of these numbers and say, how are we getting there? Specifically, another 7 or so acres, where the 2 is on the right-of-way, that's an access road. Everything to the east of that line is not, I don't have a development plan on as well. So it further makes the argument of, there's about 8 acres in total there that you'd say, well, what's that going to be, what's that assessed? Again, I got charged the 80% rate where today it's farm ground. I wish I could sell it. I can't sell it. It's not in market. It's not developable in today's environment. So those are furthering factors to say, why was it assessed at the value it was? My only answer to that was, it was pretty easy. If I looked at it, they see homes being built, they see development started, it's pretty quick to jump on and say, here's where we're going to go. The other properties, maybe they don't have the PMU existing from the city or not, and that's why I said I can gladly provide that. We'll start from there. I think ongoing from there, if you continue to go and say, well, where are we going to look at? And I think I stated it in your report that when you look at the assessment of the values of the properties, it was who's benefiting, who got the benefit. And although there is an argument for saying upstream versus downstream, it looks at the benefited parties as a whole. So now you look at the property number 23, and you look at that and you see that they were charged, I don't have the exact number, $101 of the total, which is a very minuscule amount. And the theory is, I believe, that it's not draining into the property. It's upstream, downstream. I don't know if I used the right word, but you can't be upstream value. So then it wouldn't benefit, as my understanding. If it wasn't upstream, it would not benefit. But yet, prior to my development and me stopping the drainage and putting in $400,000 of ponds that exist today in stormwater, it's on testimony that the property continually flooded. They couldn't farm it. The house was getting flooded. It was a problem that was resulting from the water that would flow. 50 acres of watershed would flow into my property, and I would pass along that 50 plus my 50 onto their property into this drain tile that was blowing up. It was blowing out. They were having all kinds of problems. This has been going on for in my, again, the testimony that was given at my hearing, my rezoning hearing, over 10 years. So it was a problem that existed while I was farm ground or not. Now, we are fixing the problem and addressing it. But if you look at that property, the majority of the cost to fix the pipe is all the way down at the south end, if it's my understanding. So you look at it and say, is there a benefit? Yes, we're draining into a tile that's all the way down at the end of the property, and that's where the pipe comes into effect, and we drain and we're fixing that. But yet you can look at the property alone and say, everything flows into that line. So if we aren't going to fix the line, the property would flood. Now they're going to drain into it and benefit by that. In fact, we'd also look at it and say it's zoned, again, assessed at agricultural rates because they're farming it and there's not a zoning plan in place. But the property itself, give me 1 second, please, is being marketed as prime development property with available sewer, comprehensive use land plan for commercial and industrial use. It's also being marketed at $75,000 an acre. Farm ground in Delaware, Ohio sells for $5,000 an acre. To confirm this, I also went to the Board of Realtors. John Royer is the past president of the Board of Realtors, Columbus Board of Realtors, and confirmed $5,000 is the going rate for farming ground in Delaware, Ohio. $75,000 an acre is commercial ground. So we're assessing the property, 3% of their property in the watershed because they're not technically draining into all of the pipe, but they're draining into a portion of it. We're also assessing it at agricultural values, which you said goes back to the 5 times the value rate versus residential, commercial, or anything else. So the property is being marketed as a commercial use, and prior to my putting in the pipe, it was $50,000 an acre. After I fix it and put in all the pipe, it's valued at $75,000 an acre on their own marketing, their own information. $25,000 benefit at 70 acres is $1.7 million benefit they've already realized because of the pipe. But yet they're being assessed $100. Those are all questions that I would like to say, again, we all agree on, there's a benefit, great benefit for it, but when I have a burden of 77% of the costs, it's out of line, I don't understand. So if we can, that's why I'd like to ration all that, find that out, I'm all in the benefit of it, I'll pay my 40%, 50% of the cost because that's what I am, I got it, no problem, won't refute it. So those would be my questions for you and the board to say, can we, if we won't move forward, which I hope you do vote for, but can we at least vote forward to go through and know that we're going to go through with the cost being allocated in a fair accounting reasons that everyone in the room can understand. I'd ask for further clarification for how one arrived at some of the numbers. Haven't gotten that yet. I think Brett asked that I ask for those here. So when I ask for a 3% valuation on the farming ground, is that an ordinance or is that an opinion of the gentleman that put the report together? I don't know that yet, but I'd like to know that. Is the 5 times agricultural value versus the 80 times residential value also an ordinance, a statute, something out there that puts that in history, my guess, or is it, again, the opinions of the gentleman that put it together that possibly at the time didn't have the information that now I've presented to them to say, here's what certain properties in the area are doing, here's what certain properties are valued at, here's what they're being marketed at. Now we have that information, hopefully it would be something we could sit back down and say, let's reassess this as it should be, and then we'll continue to move forward. That would be my request. Do you have any questions?
Questions?
No questions?
No, not right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Others who would like to speak in favor of the petition? All right, we will move on to those who wish to speak in opposition to the petition. And if anyone does want to speak in opposition, I would ask you to come to the podium and identify yourself, and I'll swear you in. Crickets. Okay. We can take some questions in.
I
For
guess the obvious question, Eric, how much, as far as how the costs are allocated, is that something the commissioners can weigh in on or not?
Eric Hostutler, Assistant Prosecuting Attorney. Anybody who wishes to file exceptions to the schedule of assessments has until today to do that.
And at that point, you would have a hearing on, your hearing includes confirming the assessment, so you absolutely do have to weigh in on that. One of the things that you're approving in your resolution is the schedule of assessments, so if you have any question about how those are done, that's something that if somebody files an exception to the schedule of assessments, that you would be required to determine before you make your final order.
Was there such a filing? So does he have before the end of this meeting, or it should have been done before the meeting, or?
Statute says on or before the day of the hearing. The law that governs public hearings, any necessary filings must be made before the hearing. So it could have been filed up until the beginning of the hearing today. That's in the notice. That is included in the letter.
So to cut to the chase, are we unable to consider that since it wasn't filed before the hearing?
You're unable to hear any exception because one was not filed. However, what you are confirming is the schedule. So if you have a concern about whether the schedule is correct, you absolutely have the ability to seek more information and make sure that you're comfortable with the way that it's prepared.
Well, I guess I'd like to hear from Scott or Brett, whoever, to clarify or answer some of the gentleman's concerns.
Yeah, the allocation
Or Rob.
methodology.
Yeah.
Or Rob.
Whomever. Yes.
Good afternoon, Rob Riley, Chief Deputy Engineer. Mr. McCall, appreciate your time and being here to raise your concerns. You raised a specific question about the factors used in calculating the assessments, what we call the A factor, R factor, W, there's an R1, and those factors are basically derived from an opinion of value, relative value, between the different land uses. So in A, basically the difference between an agricultural and a residential use is a difference between 5 and 80. The rationale behind that is that the use of drainage is different, fundamentally different between agricultural parcels and residential parcels. If you think about an agricultural parcel can tolerate some ponding on a temporary basis, can tolerate flooding on a temporary basis. A residential parcel cannot. Flooding of a residential parcel means flooded septic systems or flooded basements. Has a more profound effect on a residential property than it does an agricultural property. So that's part of the rationale behind calculating the difference, the relative difference between agricultural and residential. Mr. McCall also spoke to the parcel 24, which is the northern portion of his development, being valued or should be valued as agricultural instead of residential. And I can certainly understand the thinking behind that statement. I would respond simply that the development of parcel 24, what we have assigned as 24, we feel is imminent. All of the necessary utilities, roads, services to that parcel are present. They have been constructed with sections, I believe, 1 through 3 of Belmont Place, and so sections 4 and 5, which are currently ready, to my knowledge, approved by the city pending completion of this drainage improvement. Those sections are ready to go. It's not accurate to say that of the other parcels. They may have zoning for a higher use, but to my knowledge don't have approved development plans or have infrastructure already in place to service those properties. So I think there is a fundamental difference between parcels 24 and the other parcels surrounding it. So that was the basis of our difference in determining that parcel 24 was to be valued as residential.
And you value the parcel as a whole, meaning that if there's a pond on the parcel or part of the parcel will be undeveloped just because it has to be through zoning requirements. I mean, you don't portion off and you say 70% of the parcel is going to be residential, the other 30 agricultural. When it's one...
Or green space or something.
Yeah, to my knowledge, it was based on the number of lots anticipated. And Brett, maybe you can speak to that. You have more knowledge than I do on that.
Thank you, Rob.
I think specifically with regards to the ponds, it has always been the standard procedure to consider retention and detention ponds, their stormwater structures, to consider them at the same residential value as the surrounding properties. The need, the contribution to the drainage system would be the same. If those residential retention and detention ponds were to plug or overflow, cease to operate, then the ramifications, as Rob discussed, would not be the same as you would see in a woods or an agricultural property.
Yeah, I had a question on, Mr. McCauley asked whether the allocation methodology was statutory or departmental or policy or what. Just from my own knowledge, I'd like to understand how that is done. Is it statutory or so on?
It is not, to my knowledge, a statutory formula. The formula we describe in the report is based on our, and I'll let you follow up on this, but basically it is the opinion of the county engineer and the Soil and Water Conservation District based on a great deal of historical precedent. We've been using this exact same formula for about 10 years now, and I'll defer to Scott on that. Before I get too far, I'll just turn it over to Scott, because he's better equipped to talk.
It is not statutory. Scott Stevens, Delaware Soil and Water Conservation District. Sorry about that. It's my first time. No, it's not statutory. It's left to my understanding of the code is that it's left to the county engineer to use their best professional judgment and make that recommendation to the commissioner.
And you've been using this methodology for a number of years. I don't know the exact.
We have since really inception of the 6131 or the drainage petition program in the county, when we first formed that three-way agreement with the county commissioners and the county engineer's office in 1997. These factors have been consistent through that. We did it early on. We did a pretty comprehensive evaluation of the schedule assessment, or kind of the construction of that schedule assessments across many other counties across the state of Ohio that had already endeavored to manage these projects. And these factors are consistent in one shape or another across the state. There was actually a grad student research project done to kind of assimilated all those, and we tried, to Mr. McCauley's point, to identify factors or things that everybody could understand and that were intuitive: land use, acres, those type things, that to try to simplify the process.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
I have several questions. I'm just going to kind of walk through your concerns step by step, just to make sure that, no, I don't need you. If I misspeak, raise your hand, I'll let you, okay? Let's start up Pulte up in the north. I don't know who wants to come to it. Scott, maybe we start with you. Okay. It is Mr. McCauley, right? Yes. It's Mr. McCauley's perspective that because it's on the Pulte, is going to be developed. Please, let me handle this. Is that a criteria that you've taken into consideration in the past, or not?
No, we looked at the most current land use, and I think to Rob's point, if there were development plans on the table in similar fashion to what's on the residual of parcel 24, Mr. McCauley's parcel, then obviously that would be different. But I think that land's been owned, it's been farmed and owned, but there's lots of acres across the county that are developer-owned that have been farmed for decades under that. To try to second-guess when or the what-if with that parcel, it is and has been.
And you wouldn't know how many lots that you...
there's no development plan on the table to even begin to speculate what the development of that parcel might look like.
I think this is a little bit unique in the sense all these different... This is not normal. Normally we have more homogeneous properties. Yes. Introduce yourself.
Bob Bergerford, Delaware County Engineer's Office. Step back to last week at this time, Mr. McCauley indicated that there were approved plans for all these parcels that he's questioning today. Last week, I did inquire with the City of Delaware in regards to at what stage engineering plans. I mean, there's zoning, and then there's engineering plans, and there's development plans. The Pulte site does not have approved engineering plans. The Ohio Health site was supposed to be a site of a hospital, which I was told is no longer going to be there because it's been built other places. And then the adjacent properties, they do not have, and neither do we, our county engineer's office, have development plans for those. However, in respect to the Stavroff property, they are inches from filing final engineering plans, and they also have the approved development plan. This is through conversation I had with the City of Delaware last week.
So you said inches away, so you are including them, you're not including them?
The final engineering plan for the parcel 24 is, they've gone through preliminary engineering. They're essentially at back check stage. And as Rob had indicated, I mean, the infrastructure is there. They're actually currently stockpiling on parcel 24, and development of that parcel is imminent.
I have another question. I'm going to walk through this first. You have something you want to show us, so...
Well, I guess part of what Brett's saying I agree with. On part of that property, I am as far along as Pulte is. I have this is Pulte's preliminary development plan, approved PMU use for the property, hundreds of homes. That's where I stand on part of my property, no different than they do. The only difference is I've started phase 1 and 2, phase 1, 2, and 3, which isn't shown up here today. But that's where we stand. As of May 5th or May 3rd, hopefully Wednesday, I'll have a submission in, so I'm not going to deny that I'm trying to get my preliminary and final engineering approved for another section. That's not different. This is a timing thing. We're talking about, are we as of January 1, 2017? If we were doing this as of January 2014 when we submitted it, I had dirt, no approvals, nothing approved at all. Not one thing further than where we are. So to argue that one zone versus the other, or one has utilities versus the other, we're in the business to develop properties. The hospital ground bought that property, developed the property. Whether they've hit hard times or not doesn't make a difference. They're going to develop that property. It's zoned for development. It has utilities to the site. Pulte is the #1 national home builder in the country. They're going to develop that site. It's developing.
You answered my question, okay? Thank you. I'm going to kind of, he also said, Mr. McCauley, I believe indicated there's a piece of property on the west side that is not being developed, or in your comments?
So that would go back to the argument on the west side of the access road number 2.
Is it part of the watershed?
It's part of that. You see where the brown line right here? Over everything on the front of Crown of the Way.
Okay. How was that?
That 10 acres.
Was that treated as agricultural, or was that treated as development?
Residential. It is 0 development plans. It is 0 engineering
Okay.
plans.
Let me ask them the question. Okay. So why is it not being treated as agricultural?
In consultation with the county engineer, the deputy engineer, and the Soil and Water District, the decision was made to treat that whole parcel as R.
You still feel that way today after what you've heard?
I defer to Rob on that answer.
Yeah, Commissioner, yes, I think we do, because, again, based on the proximity and the nature of the presence of utilities, roadway infrastructure, utility infrastructure present there, we do think that's appropriate.
Thank you. Now, the wooded area in Grady's, that's wooded. Was it evaluated the way it's evaluated because it's wooded, or just because it's not developed? Or both?
The Ohio Health parcel was broken into, you can see no, I'm probably not going to see it. We have the wooded area here, and then the part that's being farmed here. Given, going back to our assumption or our determination that there's no active development plan for that parcel, the assessments for that parcel were calculated as we would normally, or per the standard procedure, where that parcel was broken into the wooded area, which was then multiplied, the acres benefited multiplied by the woods constant, and the agricultural area, which would have been multiplied by the agricultural constant. They also have part of this access. Now I can't see it. There we go. That access portion is also part of the Ohio Health property.
One last piece that he mentioned. So I'm making the rounds. You're welcome. 23. He talked about, I think he said $100 or slightly more than $100, and that is currently being advertised for sale as commercial property, and that the value of that property, because of all this, is going to pay his number, $25,000. Any change, any feeling about that? Any comment on that?
It doesn't change my opinion. The parcel 23 does not need the length or size of the improvement to enact drainage improvements on their property. They have access to that good and sufficient outlet, so that decision or that use of the 3% as far as the percentage use of the project would be consistent with schedules of assessments that we've done on previous projects. As far as the impact that that the property may be up for sale for development, I'd defer to Rob, but my opinion would be, anybody can put a sign up on their property advertising the property for whatever they want. It doesn't make it an active development.
I have one last question. I'll defer. Again, the water on that property is largely coming from north of that property, and I assume that's a major consideration. All the people that are contributing to that are all the people north of Peach Blow Road there, generally. Is that also a factor?
A factor in what, I'm sorry?
In fact, that how you're valuing the property, most of the water is contributing to the flooding issue or the drainage issue is coming from north.
Right, and that's where the percent use factor would come into play. I mean, all those properties on the north side of Peach Blow Road are using 100%, the entire length of the improvement as it's proposed. Parcel 23, as I said, doesn't need 100% of the improvement. They basically just need the last stretch of open channel.
I just want to clear that. I think you wanted to say something. You still stood up? Or? Okay.
Margaret Sherman. I'd like to comment about...
I'm sorry, we need to swear you in.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
Barbara Sherman, and we own the property 23. I'd like to comment about the drainage there. It will take about an acre and a half of right-of-way for the maintenance of this ditch, which we've asked for no damages or anything else. It will benefit our property directly very little. We could go the next 20 years without doing any improvement other than on our own property for our own farming use. So the benefit of the project is not for ours.
So you're contributing an acre plus for the drainage?
Yes, because they have to have maintenance right away.
And because of that, it lowers the cost for everybody else?
Well, that, and because of the fact that they have to have the right-of-way for the maintenance and for the swale, and we asked for no damages for that. The adjoining property sold recently for $70,000, nearly $70,000 an acre. And ours has been listed for 10 years. It may be agriculture for another 20. We have no idea of knowing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I made my circle, so I got the
Got your questions answered?
Yeah, nothing now.
Okay. Yeah, I've had mine answered.
If I may add,
Yes.
Burgerford County Engineer's Office, just speaking to the previous questions that were posed, specific to 23, yes, as we all saw, there were for sale signs out there. Yes, it is being marketed as development property, as Kevin had indicated. However, our office does not have any preliminary engineering plan submittals, as well as from the zoning perspective. Our office has not been involved in a development-driven activity for that said parcel. That's why we made the determination that its current use of agricultural pasture farmland stays.
All right. Looks like there's no additional testimony. Fellow commissioners,
I
any
do have
additional
one more
questions?
question, but I thought Joe might have some questions. I do have a question. If this project was being done a year from now, and we were having that hearing, and what I'm trying to ask, you have to pick a time and place when these things are done. This happens to be the time and the place. So it's reasonable to assume if this was a year from now, the allocations would be different because of the development in the area. Someone can just respond to my comment, yes, no, or I don't know what I'm talking about. That's good.
Yes, it's entirely possible. The allocation might be different. I don't think any of us are any illusion that development doesn't move fast in this county, and, things could surface and have, development plans could occur or be present on those properties that they don't exist now. Just as an example, Mr. McCauley spoke to the fact that there are more lots that are platted now in the Belmont Place subdivision that aren't reflected on our map, and the reason for that is at some point we have to, cut off and do our parcel clip so that we can formulate the schedule of assessments, and, parcels that get added to the watershed or ownership changes happen after that time. Like I said, at some point we have to have that cutoff point. Yes, going forward, it is certainly possible, and I would expect that, in an ever-changing watershed such as this one, that, yes, it's entirely possible and probable even maybe that the schedule might change.
The point I was wanting to make is just the fact that you have to pick a point in time. This happens to be that point in time.
Correct.
So you have to look at things as they are, because every lot in Delaware County over the next 1,000 years could get developed.
That's absolutely correct.
But with that theory, everybody would be paying residential rates, theoretically.
Right.
So you answered my question. I appreciate it. Good.
I guess I'll ask maybe the final question, but I wanted to ask Rob, Brett, Scott, Brett, if there's anything you've heard today from the discussion of the participants in the petition or others that would change your mind in your recommendation.
Or change the allocation.
Yeah, or change the allocation, recommendation of the allocation.
The short answer is no. I think for the points that have just made, you've got to say, today's the time, the place. Things change a month or 6 months from now. Who knows? You've got to draw the line at some point in time to say this is what the best of the information we have available. From a technical standpoint, the design, the engineering of the project, absolutely not. I don't believe that's in question at any level. I think to provide a good sufficient outlet for the watershed, what's in place will do it. So with that, no on that count as well.
All right. And one last call for other comments or questions.
May I ask another question?
I'm sorry, what?
May I ask another
Sure.
question?
If you could go back to the podium.
Kevin McCall again.
Yes.
It sounds like it's going down one road, possibly. Your question, I think, is a good one as well, as time and place. Like I said, we started this 3 years ago when it was dirt. We're here today, so bad timing on my behalf. If, in fact, we're going to go with these assessments as placed, can I at least enter into an agreement with the county that says that if any of these properties, say in the next 10 years, do develop, they've got to reimburse me? They're over, just like an oversized sewer line. I bring in the sewer line, I oversize it for future development. It goes to a property that comes into this watershed and develops in the next few years. Why am I paying for that because of bad timing? If we're going to stand here and say, all these properties are agricultural, when we all know what they are, can I at least get some kind of benefit? Because this doesn't sit well. I mean, this is pretty bad.
Do you want to address this?
Yeah, I was going to say, we can ask our prosecutor.
Ask the prosecutor.
Sure. Eric Hostetler, Assistant Prosecuting Attorney. If the petition is granted and the project proceeds to construction, this will go on maintenance under Chapter 6137, and within Chapter 6137, the board does have the ability to make modifications to the ongoing assessments and the base due to changes in circumstances. So if a higher intensity use on this project does occur in the future, the board would have the ability to revise those assessments. In terms of working out a reimbursement deal, that the statute in 6131 does allow for property owners to come together and enter into an agreement on an improvement to be made. And if the petitioner would like to go that route, that's not something that you as a board could administer. That would have to be done privately. So his testimony has been that he's in favor of the petition. If, due to what he's heard today in regards to how much it's going to be assessed to his property, wanted to withdraw his support for the petition, he could certainly do that and proceed with trying some private arrangement to deal with this in the same way that the improvement would deal with it. But other than that, there's not a way for the county to force another private property owner to pay somebody who may have been assessed more for the project.
Eric, to clarify, so down the road, 5 years, Pulte develops, something happens in 23, theoretically, a claim could be made by Mr. McCauley to reassess. Is that what I'm hearing, or did I misunderstand?
There is a process under 6137 whereby the commissioners can make adjustments to the base for the assessments and also modify the assessments.
Would that be done based on the request of someone? Would that be a resident in the area or
Any property owner. Any property owner has the right to
Have
petition.
somebody approaching us
Yes.
or initiating something.
Correct. Any property owner could do that. Also, on a periodic basis, if it's not by request of a property owner, on a periodic basis, the commissioners are required to undergo that analysis themselves. I know that's something that we've been talking about, and we're in the process of developing a plan for the commissioners to do those regular reviews as required by statute.
So theoretically, the question Mr. McCauley was asking, there's already a procedure for that.
There was a procedure for modifying the base and modifying the ongoing assessments, but those ongoing assessments are a fraction of the cost of the construction assessment. What he's describing would not be a modification of that cost of the construction assessment.
Right, just the maintenance.
Correct.
Just the maintenance.
Because this is not a situation where somebody who was not intended to be a user would become a user of the system. That's where somebody could actually have a recovery or a catch-up construction assessment. That's not really something I'm prepared to talk about today as to what would go into whether that would apply or not knowing the circumstances. I could stand up here and talk about dozens of different hypothetical situations, and without having the actual facts, I don't want to entertain that discussion today. But the process is at least there in the event that some drastic and, well, you could say unjust enrichment to another property owner could be remedied in some way. But in terms of a reimbursement agreement, that would have to be done privately. And the statute does allow for private owners to come up with their own solution and basically present it to the board. That hasn't happened.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, engineer's office wants to add?
Yes, if I may. Mr. McCauley, and we're very sensitive to the argument that we often hear, and we're very we acknowledge that it is the case. The first guy in, the first developer in, if you will, often gets saddled with the bulk of the cost of the off-site infrastructure improvements, and that's not unique to drainage. That's also the case with roadways. Very commonly what happens is the first developer in has to build the turn lanes and the off-site traffic improvements, and then succeeding developments that follow, that stud into that development, don't have to pay because those improvements are already made. Unfortunately, that's just a limitation of the system, and to Commissioner Merrill's standpoint, the snapshot in time when that development is approved, when, in this case, when the improvement is, the drainage improvement is approved, we look at the value and the requirements for that particular development, recognizing that additional benefit will come in the future. The only thing the law allows, to which Eric spoke to, is the maintenance assessment, adjusting the maintenance assessment so that when those properties do develop, that maintenance assessment could be adjusted, but not to the construction. So that's, again, not unique to drainage. That also comes up with roadway, and unfortunately, there's not a... And sewer, certainly, thank you. And that's maybe a limitation of the system, I suppose. So, thank you.
I'm going to suggest that we close the hearing.
Resolution number 17-454, in the matter of closing public hearing to address Havens 503 Drainage Improvement Petition Project.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 17-454. Mr. Merrill? Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
I'm going to ask that you read the resolution in favor of the improvements, and I'll have some comments after we finish.
Resolution number 17-455, in the matter of finding in favor of the improvement and affirming the order for the Havens 503 Drainage Improvement Petition Project.
Second?
Discussion.
This one's a little more difficult than the average, but we've seen we have a couple of those this year. Mr. McCauley, I hope if nothing else, you recognize that we do take this pretty darn seriously, and we're trying to do it the right way. And I guess this, I'm talking about me personally. The one question I would have had, those 10 acres on the west side, but that would be insignificant in the scheme of things, and that's just me talking personally. I think, I'm not going to ask you this question, you certainly want you to answer it. You do want this project to go forward for all the reasons that serve as your interest and everyone else's interest in the area. And I do believe it serves the common good, and I do believe it's beneficial, and those are the reasons I do support it today.
Yes, I support it, too. I do believe it will be beneficial for the area, and I wish we could have parsed out some, and, but we had to go with a certain time frame. And in order for you all to go ahead and move the petition forward, there has to be a certain stop date at which you look at everything and then evaluate. So I will vote in favor of the petition.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of in the same position. I think Rob Riley said it very well. There is a point where you have to draw the line, and this is not unique to drainage ditch petitions. It's also the sewer and transportation infrastructure and so on. And this is a complaint, quite honestly, I've heard a number of times over the years. Is first guy in pays more than his or her share. And, the time to work out sharing is prior to the hearings. And we just don't have that in place today. So, again, it is an interesting one and certainly a bit of a challenge, but I will support it as well. So I guess we'll go ahead and take a vote.
Vote on motion 17-455. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Resolution number 17-456, in the matter of the Commissioners confirming the assessments, approving the payment schedule, and awarding the letting of contracts for the Havens 503 Drainage Improvement Petition Project.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Vote. Break for it.
Vote. Yes.
Vote on motion 17-456. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
That's it? Okay. So now we can adjourn. Okay, we are adjourned. Yeah, exactly. That was a really interesting,
Yeah, boy.
very interesting.
You go with the best facts.
I know, and I have heard